The F1 teams are planning on introducing huge upgrades and new concepts next year. At least, that is for the teams, as we already know the concept as Red Bull's winning one. And this new influx of upgrades and concept changes will see the 2024 F1 cars becoming increasingly identical, yet the concept is developable and still has more than enough potential. The feared convergence of ideas and efforts on the new Formula One regulations may resurface, as Red Bull's ideas are producing the best outcomes, while those of Mercedes, Ferrari and others have proven unproductive for competing at the top with an RB19 that dominated the 2023 championship. This concept, however, is still very developable as said by various teams, and so we will be able to see cars more similar to those of Milton Keynes next season, but with teams that will not give up their own innovations and solutions, further exploring the technical regulations with the awareness that copying will not be the solution to beating Red Bull. One of the concerns that followed the introduction of the new F1 regulations was the severe technological constraints they imposed on engineers. The last major regulatory change, 2009, was noteworthy in that it was no longer restrictive. The proposed requirements for 2021, on the other hand, are quite strict. This is a shame because it will make all cars the same, which is not what F1 should become, Adrian Newey stated 3 years ago. The genius from Colchester was not the only one to express his displeasure with the regulation changes. In reality, many specialists complained about having less freedom to explore new ideas and solutions. However, the first year of regulation modifications revealed radically different cars, not just in terms of aesthetics, but also and most importantly in terms of concepts. For the past 2 winters, Ferrari and Mercedes have placed their trust in their own ideas and concepts, but the Red Bull concept had more potential. The domination of Red Bull in the second half of the 2022 season, which continued in the season that finished only a few weeks ago, resulted in a first significant verdict. The aerodynamic design chosen by Adrian Newey's crew had the most promise. It is no coincidence that many teams, particularly those further away from the Milton Keynes team, began to follow the development path devised by the technical office led by Wache last winter. And while Ferrari and Mercedes continued to place significant trust in their various aerodynamic concepts, which were maximized with very low ground clearances, but were extremely sensitive to this last but fundamental technical factor. The crucial implication is that both cars were highly penalized by aerodynamic bouncing. Mercedes with the W13 from the very first laps of the test, while the Maranello team was still in development. The 2023 anti-hopping regulatory improvements allowed cars to move away from the porpoising trigger point, although the SF23 from earlier in the season was still a victim of it. But it wasn't the only issue for the Ferrari squad at the start of the season. The direction we took was not the best performing, the most profitable. Enrico Cardile, the Maranello team's technical director, acknowledged openly. The same thing happened at Mercedes, where the zero-pod project was a complete failure, prompting the return of James Allison as technical director and the departure of Mike Elliott, who, as head of the technical department, endorsed the decision to design a W14 that ran too high, despite the fact that Red Bull actually lowered the optimal ride height of its car compared to the previous one. This showed us that for now there is only one successful concept in Formula One, but it is still developable and has a lot of promise. So the other teams basically had no alternative but to discard their concepts in order to achieve a revolution in the operation of the cars at Maranello and Brackley. The fastest cars are those with the greatest conceptual strength, according to James Allison. But there has been a lot of discussion concerning the Red Bull downwash bellies, which were first created by Alpine and later adopted by Aston Martin and McLaren. And as an aerodynamic idea cannot and must not be mistaken with the shape of the bodywork alone, but is far more intricate and requires many deeper decisions. Where should I optimize my downforce? Is it 80 mm or 30 mm above the ground? Do you want the car to be capable of handling crosswinds? That's okay, but how many degrees do you want that optimization to have? 15? And how much weight do we put on those degrees against 5 and against 0? The Brackley team's DT usually said. Both teams were then forced to pursue a different route. Mercedes began with this at the Monte Carlo Grand Prix, whereas Ferrari began with their overhaul at the Spanish Grand Prix. It's noteworthy how both teams experienced a deterioration of their package's timing in the tunnel when they used the solution of the downwash belly on their cars. However, the new packages paved the way for more profitable development, which was maximized with subsequent packages. For Ferrari, between Austria and Japan, and for Mercedes above all, with the Austin package, which allowed Mercedes to abandon the conservative decision made last winter on the optimal ride height. And since their Singapore result, it is only obvious that Frederic Vasseur does not speak of a technological revolution for the 2024 Ferrari, since it will be an extension of the innovative idea revealed on the SF23 at the 2023 Spanish GP and refined throughout the season. Similarly, for Mercedes, the W14 was particularly extreme in several technological decisions related to the Zeropods idea, such as the one-of-a-kind chassis, and it is therefore more natural that the guys in grey-black emphasize the differences between the W14 and the W15. This winter, several teams will match their chassis and gearbox selections with what was observed on the RB19 in an attempt to catch the Milton Keynes team. Hence, the dread of arriving at an F1 with almost similar cars may resurface. The immensity of ideas observed at the start of 2022 has steadily faded, especially following the regulation adjustments enacted for 2023, which the FIA believes were required to severely limit porpoising. Everyone tried to direct as much flow as possible towards the rear axle in various ways, but only Red Bull understood how to have a stable platform in various conditions and at different heights from the ground, thus widening the operating window that caused problems for Ferrari, Mercedes, Alpine, and Aston Martin once the first significant updates on the AMR23 were brought to the track. This is a point that all of the F1 team's technical offices are attempting to study and improve for the upcoming season, intervening specifically on the chassis to rearrange the anti-intrusion cones, radiant masses, and aerodynamic parts, but also on the gearbox, which has a significant and direct impact on the bottom and diffuser design above all. Although there is only one winning aerodynamic idea, some technicians believe that it may still be developed and that the potential available, if understood, is rather significant. It should come as no surprise, therefore, that both Ferrari and Mercedes are talking about 2024 cars that are clearly more comparable to the RB19, but with their own improvements, both visually and, more importantly, in the concept specifics. And one of the other teams, apart from the top ones, that is planning on throwing everything overboard to catch up, is Alpine. As Alpine, which is owned by Renault, is aggressively developing a strategy to close the performance gap in their engine and car design for the following 2024 season. Navigating the complexity of F1's power unit freeze proved to be a daunting obstacle for the team in 2023, as their request to level the playing field with competitors was denied. In a recent interview, Alpine's deputy boss, Bruno Feymin, spoke openly about the challenges the team has faced. "We were always faced with the conflict between engine performance and aerodynamics," he went on to say. "The more power we gave the engine, the worse the aerodynamics became. We recuperate less energy than the competition and therefore produce less electrical power. We can improve the energy management software. It won't give us more horsepower, but it will give us better driving characteristics." In addition to dealing with engine performance issues, Alpine faced substantial problems on other fronts. Technical director Matt Harmon elaborated on additional hurdles, adding, "Our 2023 chassis has too much volume. We had another upgrade to the floor on the table, but to take full advantage of it, we would have needed a new chassis." Looking ahead, Alpine intends to tackle these issues by offering a thorough redesign for the 2024 season, including a new chassis, gearbox, and suspension, just like Mercedes and Ferrari are attempting. The team, based in Enstone, UK, saw significant changes in management and ownership during a season that saw only 3 significant modifications to their car. Alpine is now hoping for a year of more changes to the car than the managing board. And after Alpine finished 6th in the constructors' standings this season, they will be hoping that their enhancements for next season would allow them to make a more competitive challenge against Aston Martin and McLaren, who placed 5th and 4th respectively. And Ferrari and Mercedes are looking forward to implementing every bit of knowledge they could have taken from Red Bull in the last 2 years to be able to catch up and make sure that Red Bull won't be speeding off into the distance when the first race starts. What are your thoughts? Will the other teams be able to catch up? And will Red Bull's concept provide the other teams with enough changes to challenge for race wins? Or does Red Bull still have enough potential to unlock? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below.